All right. Good evening, y'all. Welcome to Grains and Grit Live. It's been a while, I think, since I've gone live on this channel. So I'm super excited to do it. And we have a special guest with us, my husband. He is usually behind the scenes, the one who's actually answering questions or putting links in the chat, which he's still going to be doing today. But I wanted to bring him on because he's better at explaining certain things than I am. And so we wanted to have him here just in case we need him and getting his expertise. But welcome, y'all. So we see Gina, good evening from Maryland. So welcome, y'all. And I see some of y'all have already put some comments in the chat box before this live. So I'm looking forward to delving into tariffs. So tariffs and how they're going to be affecting us as home bakers, as home millers, because as soon as I heard Trump issuing these 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada, I instantly knew certain things that I know I use a lot in my house and that are very common probably to y'all as well as those who mill our own grains, that love grains, that this can be affecting us as well. And I just wanted to chat about that. Now, I know that right now, Mexico and Canada tariffs have been paused for 30 days. So who knows if that is going to be an indefinite pause or they come back. We just don't know right now. So I wanted to go ahead and have this conversation with y'all so we can be prepared no matter what. And do you know that I know that this is not a political channel. We're not going to get into whether Trump is great, whether he is bad, whether Biden was great, whether he was bad.
You said Trump. I'm unsubscribing.
I know, right? I know. I have had that. Like if I just mention Trump, I have had people unsubscribe. But
you said
I know. I said the T word.
Yeah,
I said the T word.
You said the word, so that's it.
I know.
I'm never watching you again.
Never watching again. But he is our president. Whether you voted for him or not, he is the president of the United States, and it is going to be, I think, a very interesting 4 years. But this was one of the things that he campaigned on and that he was issuing pretty much immediately right out of the gate. Okay, so yeah, we got a lot of people here. We got Ohio, Missouri, Tennessee. Oh, we got Canada, Raven's Nest Acres. So we have one of our neighbors too. And if you're actually in Canada or Mexico, this would be affecting y'all differently, in similar ways, but differently than actually us here in the United States. Okay, and we have Joyce from Indiana. So welcome all of y'all. And feel free to ask questions in the chat, to get commentary in the chat, whatever you're wanting to do. And I'm not able to pay attention to it as much, but my husband will nudge me if there's something I need to address. But all right, Indiana seems to be very well represented today. We've got 3 people so far. And then we have Bonnie from Connecticut. I'm sure up there up north, it's probably cold. We're now in the part of winter with Florida where it doesn't know if it wants to be hot or cold. So there you go. And Colorado, North Carolina, Ozark Mountains. Ohio. Raven's Nest Acres. Oh, it was from Canada. Says it's going to be bad for both sides. Yep.
Yes. No one but the government wins when there are tariffs involved.
Yeah. And just to give you a little bit of background, why my husband is actually here with this is one of his bachelor's degrees is actually in political science, history minor, which means that he read all the books and knows a lot of history and how tariffs have been used, especially in the world of politics, how that affects people. And then also he happens to be an expert in trade with Mexico because he owns his own business, his own marketing firm, and he's had several clients that work in the realm of trade with Mexico, manufacturing in Mexico specifically. And he writes a lot of content for them for a decade now. So I would say you know your stuff.
Yeah. Eddie, I assume that was a sarcastic comment, but if not, we're not here to discuss economics and finance per se. Mm-hmm. We just want to understand how this is going to impact, grains, pricing, et cetera. But what she was talking about as far as my expertise is I am a content creator, which means people pay me to create content that is trustworthy, reliable, and interesting regarding different topics. Now, I've carved out over the years, over a decade now, more than a decade, I've carved out a niche as a subject matter expert on trade, international trade, doing business with Mexico.
Yep.
Some of my clients have been shelter companies, which help U.S. manufacturers do business in Mexico. So as such, I've studied out quite a bit regarding economics and finance, but I don't want to put myself out there as some sort of expert necessarily, but I have spent many years writing on those subjects. So if I can help in any way, I'm happy to.
Yeah. And again, I don't understand, this is not a political channel or anything like that, but the world of politics sometimes does affect us as home millers, home bakers, just being in general, especially if you cook a lot from scratch, you're trying to source good ingredients. And this is one of those things that is going to affect us. And I wanted to have that conversation with y'all so you kind of know and how to be best prepared. So again, they're on pause right now. But I think there are definitely some things that we can do and keep in mind, because it's not just tariffs that can disrupt. We all saw what COVID did. And how greatly that disrupted the supply chain. There are just certain things that happen that can very much disrupt things as we know it, especially when it comes to our grains specifically. And the biggest thing that I know I immediately thought of when I heard about these tariffs was Azure Standard, who I do support. I immediately reached out to them. Azure Standard was one company that I work with, and then Hacienda was the other one. And there are two reasons why those companies immediately jumped to my mind is because Azure Standard, I know, and you can check this out on their website, I know that they do source several of their grains from Canada.
Yeah.
Other ones come from overseas, like quinoa comes from South America. That's one of the places it's grown. So I'm not sure if that's like flown in or it comes through Mexico. I'm not sure about that. But I do know especially their oats come from Canada. And if Canada is slapped with 25% tariffs, then logically speaking, that's going to mean either Azure Standard will be finding another source for oats. They may have to increase their pricing. That definitely can affect us. There may be just supply issues where if you get your oats from Azure, you may find that they start not being in stock. And I did reach out to Azure Standard for this, and they're super helpful, and they definitely have their eye on this. And they told me at the time, this was several days ago, that David, who is the CEO of Azure, does plan on putting out a video. They said sometime this week. I do not see it yet, but addressing this. So be on the lookout, and I will probably share that video at some point.
That's a good question. Student account asked.
Okay. Student account asked, hi, y'all. I source my grains from organic American farms. Will this cause prices to go up? Yes. Okay. He is nodding yes. And the reason why is, I think you would agree, supply and demand issue, you think? Or
well,
it's
what tariffs are engineered to do, is to raise prices domestically. That's literally why they are employed. Tariffs are a tax on internationally imported products. And anytime you add a tax on doing business with other people who may have better pricing outside of this country, domestic producers will also raise their prices to just below that mark. So the idea is, if you're paying $1 a pound for something, but then you're buying it from, say, Canada, but there's a tariff on it, say 100% tariff, just for purposes of illustration, and so now it's going to cost $2 a pound. Well, then domestic producers are going to eventually raise their prices to probably $1.90 a pound. And so it's a supply and demand issue. Prices will go up whether you're buying internationally or domestically. But the whole purpose of tariffs originally was to support local industry, or to give them an artificial advantage.
Yeah, or at the very least, the grains might already be more expensive here in the United States, and kind of cutting off a cheaper source.
Yeah, but they will rise. They will rise long term, in fact.
Yeah. And so that's definitely. Now, I will say this. Now, this is purely my opinion and what I understand of grains. Here in the United States, we do have an abundance of our hard red, our hard white, and our soft white wheat. Even Azure Standard, they grow them themselves. We have a lot of farmers for those three main grains. So I do believe that you will still organic or conventional. We have a lot of options of those farmers here in the US. So I don't know if it will affect those grains per se. Because even if you go to Azure Standard's website with certain of their grains, they might say they source it from US and Canada. But I did look shortly before coming on here. I definitely noticed that their oats are a big one that they source from Canada. Their oat groats, it says sources from Canada. Rolled oats, Canada. Other ones, US and Canada. So I would say if you like oats, that go ahead and, place that in your order next time with Azure Standards. You can go ahead and be prepared with that, or finding another source. Thankfully, as far as if you buy oats already rolled, those can be found in the store. But of course, I do like to roll my own. So I'm looking at those oat groats. So that would definitely be, and I've ordered from Azure before. And that was definitely a concern for me, thinking that either they're going to have supply issues or their prices are going to go up.
It's like you have a grainy on here, Anna Billings.
Oh, yes, Anna. Anna's one of my grainies, and we did a Granny Bunch hangout, on Tuesday. So good to see you twice this week. Hey, Anna. I love my grainies. So yeah, that's the biggest one that I've seen is oats, especially with Azure Standard. And then if you're concerned about a grain, if you really like ordering a certain grain from them, just pull it up on their website and they list where they source their grain from. So that'll give you an idea if you should be concerned or not. Now the second one, oh yeah, Kimberly. Yep. She's a grainy. Didn't make the live. I know we missed you. Now, the second company that I mentioned was Hacienda. And if you've seen me on this channel, I love Hacienda. They're a company that I've recently started working with, probably just in the past 6-7 months or so. Love Hacienda because that's where I get my true heirloom corn and heirloom beans. And those are coming straight from Mexican farmers. We reached out to them as well. I think they're just kind of waiting because right now, at least that tariff is paused with Mexico. So I think they're just kind of waiting to see. But if you have been wanting to try Hacienda or you really like their mozzarella or their corn or their beans like I do, I would buy from them now because all of their product is coming straight from Mexican farmers. And they definitely would be ones affected if the tariffs hit, if these 25% tariffs hit Mexico, and it would really break my heart to see, because that means that the prices either have to rise, they're going to have supply issues. Someone's going to be affected by this. Okay.
Does the U.S. grow kamut?
Does the U.S. grow kamut? We do. Let me hop on Azure right now, because I think now Azure lately has not had kamut, which again is the trademark version of Corzon, which is the wheat. So let me look at their Corzon. Yeah. So if you on Azure, their Corzon, their sources are USA and Canada. So, and I will say, Azure Standard has the best price that I've seen for Corzon. I do like to get that grain from them because it can be a very expensive grain. And it's actually the best price that I've seen from Azure Standard. And if you haven't checked them out, it's grainsandgrit.com/Azure is where you can check them out if you're not familiar with them. But they always have the best price on that. And they do come sources from USA and Canada. So that does tell me that either there's going to be supply issues, less of that grain available, the pricing go up, something like that. Pleasant Hill Grain also sells Corzon and kamut. I am not sure. Let me see. I think theirs is US based, but let me double check. Let me see if they say. They've also been sold out for a bit. And then Country Life Foods is another one that has it. Okay, so Let me see if they say where theirs is from. Yeah, I don't know if PHG states. Oh, okay, here we go. Yeah, okay. So PHG also United States and Canada. So it does look like it's between the US and Canada as far as our Corazon and Kamut goes. So another grain that I love very much that I use quite often in my house, that would definitely be effective. Okay. Yeah. Gina says, I only use Kamut because I'm extremely gluten intolerant. Yeah. So just Gina, this would be something to consider for you, is knowing that it's kind of between US and Canada, and Kamut and Corazon as an ancient grain, it's already lower in stock anyway. It's already one of the more expensive grains. So that's definitely something to think about, is maybe go ahead and stocking up on it right now while we don't have the tariffs. So that way, it's ready to go. But, that's the beauty of grains, y'all, is that, good bucket, good lid, and it'll keep. Don't worry. Even if you don't use it for a year or two, it'll keep. It doesn't matter. Okay. And another way that this affects us as well, slightly outside the grains, of course, is 47% of the produce that we have in the United States, we get from Canada and Mexico. Majority from Mexico. If you love avocados, Mexico. That's limes. I know it's a lot of them. I know here in Florida we have a lot of produce here as well, but 47% is coming from Canada and Mexico. So for those of you who are home cooks, home bakers, you just like having a lot of good produce. If you haven't already found local farmers and connected with them, I would do so. Obviously, depending on where you live, determines on what can be grown. Avocados cannot be grown everywhere. Limes cannot be grown everywhere. Same with tomatoes, short growing seasons. Also, think of getting a garden yourself. These are all ways that we can kind of start preparing. And these are just good things to prepare for anyway. Doesn't matter what's going on in the political spectrum. These are just really great things to do. So connecting with your local farmers, go ahead and consider getting a garden. If you haven't already considered getting chickens, you should, because that has nothing to do with tariffs. But oh my word, I think we've all gotten whiplash from how much eggs have gone up and down over the past, I'd say since COVID. Like since COVID 2020 hit, the egg pricing has been insane. So that is not relevant to tariffs, but I would recommend everyone get chickens. Okay, let me see here. What government targets food supply and makes it harder for people to eat? That's Oshi. Oh, don't really understand the question.
Well, I don't think it's so much. I mean, it's going to impact our food supply, but it's not like these tariffs would target the food supply per se, but tariffs they're disruptive by nature. Mm-hmm. So the food supply will definitely be impacted if these tariffs actually go through. Yeah. Which, that's a discussion in and of itself.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about food here on this channel because we deal with a lot of food here, but other things to consider. I mean, Mexico manufactures a lot of our for our automotive industry. I know that's a big thing that he does. It's all about like the factories in Mexico, and it's going back and forth, like US, Mexico, US, Mexico, US, Mexico. So if you need to buy a car, buy it now. But there are other things that would definitely be affected, but we're just trying to focus on the grains and the food. But yeah, Mexico and Canada are pretty big suppliers in our food industry. It also is like things like beer, tequila, if you like those things, and it's
electronics.
Electronics is a big one. Yeah. So just overall, it would be quite disruptive. And again, not wanting to get political, but tariffs are a form of taxes. We just don't go through the IRS to get it. But again, I just wanted to let y'all know about it because especially with our oats, with our Kamut and Corazon, these are grains that, we're getting from a huge portion from Canada that can be affected. And then of course, Corn is a big one. If you like those true heirloom corns and beans, those are straight from Mexico. Mexico is the heart of corn. Pretty much what you get in the United States is your typical sweet yellow corn and kind of boring. If you really want to broaden your horizons on the corn and also the beans, that's Mexico. They got that locked tight, and it's been going very well. Alrighty. Jake Durant says, I buy my grains out of the okay, is it Tetons? I think it's Tetons. Yeah, that's Pleasant Hill Grain. I know they have a lot. Most of their grains are that company. Teton, is it Teton Grains? Yep. But if you buy from Pleasant Hill Grain, I know their hard white, their hard red is that company. You can also check them on Amazon. But yeah, especially if you know, buy local, if you happen to live in a place where you can get grains locally, definitely do that as well. I mean, you're supporting our local farmers and you're saving some money with that as well. Okay, so I think we've kind of covered, Teton, not Teton. Oh, well, I'm a Southerner, so it's Teton. It's Teton Grains. Teton Grains. We love the Teton Grains. But yeah, if you ever want to know where to buy grains, I've got that on my website, grainsandgrit.com/buy grains, BUY grains. And I recently updated it where I've actually added what companies are selling what grain. Now, obviously, they may be sold out of that particular grain, but at least that's a grain that they typically carry. So if you're looking for something specific, you can kind of glance at that really quick without fully going to like all the websites if you're not sure of it. All right. Teton. Okay. Debate on how to say Teton grains, but they're good grains. Just go with it. All right. So do y'all have any other questions or anything? That's basically what I was wanting to cover, is giving y'all a heads up of which grains to be affected. Again, I don't think the hard red, the hard white, and the soft white wheat are going to be affected as much as the ancient grains, oats, those type of grains that, Canada also gives us. And then of course the corn and beans that we get and produce that we get from Mexico. Those are the big ones. There's
also a discussion that we could have if you want, but I don't even think these tariffs are necessarily going to go through.
Mm-hmm. I'm hoping they don't.
Yeah, I mean, we reached out to some of the people, like Hacienda, for example, and they're not freaking out over this. They're keeping an eye on it. They're monitoring it. But I mean, 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, those are our largest trade partners. It would be extremely disruptive. It's so much so that I think cooler heads will prevail. And I think, if anything, it's a negotiation tactic, not an actual threat. I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Trump has proved us wrong before of how far he will go. But I think there's a very likely chance that we won't see 25% tariffs on our number 1 and 2 trade partners.
Yeah, they're our neighbors. I mean, they're right here. And I think one thing we can all agree on is when it comes to President Trump, who knows? I mean, who knows what's gonna happen? Okay. Oh, Kathy says what about einkorn? Yeah, I think, again, I do think it's those ancient grains that are coming from not just the US, but also Canada. And the reason for that is because not many people grow. Not many people are growing einkorn, kamut, corzon. And so that's why, you have to source from Canada, because just to get a bigger pool of where you can get that from. So that would be another one. Yeah, definitely your ancient grains. That looks to be one of the big ones that would be affected. But again, that's why I just say that it's a good idea to keep a stock on grains. And speaking of keeping stock of grains and prepping with grains, if you didn't know, I do have a course all about how to master prepping with grains. And they're my best tips and tricks for stocking up on grains, because they are like the best food to stock up on. They're one of the easiest foods to stock up on. So that way you always have that. And you can definitely check that out. I think we're putting the link in. Yep. Just grainsandgrit.com/prep-with-grains. It's on my website under courses as well. Amy says we keep 6 months supply at a time. Yeah, that's definitely a good idea because
I remember we actually got in. Okay, so this is jogging a memory.
Okay.
Right before the COVID fiasco, we actually upped our supply.
Yeah. Just
on a whim, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And then wasn't there a huge spike in pricing like in the summer of 2020?
Well, what it was, actually soon after because of COVID and all that. Yeah, we did see an increase in our grains, but the biggest thing actually, especially with Azure was greatly disrupted. Yeah. And good luck.
Well, I just remember thinking how valuable those buckets of grains that we had now were, whereas we bought them for like half the price, that they were just a month later. Mm-hmm. So it's funny. You never know when there's going to be like a real paradigm shift. Yeah. And a 25% tariff would definitely be something that would be bad. That cataclysmic. Mm-hmm. I mean, you would wake up, one day and grains could very well have jumped 50% or more. Yeah. Probably not the ones grown here in the U.S., but some of these more specialty grains, definitely. Yeah. And again, I don't. Chef Durbin vibes.
Oh, love the beard.
Thanks, Nate.
He's been working. I like to stroke the beard. I feel like I'm stroking the beard, thinking.
Happy to help.
Yes, happy to help. But I don't say this to like freak everyone out. Like, don't freak out and panic. God has everything under control. This is not surprising him at all. But it's a good reminder for us, have a stockpile because disruptions like this are going to happen. I mean, another pandemic could happen. Another, these tariffs could happen. I'm in Florida and a hurricane can come through and like even just y'all up north with these snowstorms, and what is the one thing people go get? Eggs, bread and milk,
It's just resilience. Yeah. It's a good feeling to know that if something like this were to go through or something else like it, you've got some flexibility there. You've got a ramp, so to speak. So I just remember the feeling when prices spiked 5 years ago and thinking, wow, it's a good thing we've got stocked up recently because I paid, bottom dollar for these. And now I don't have to worry about buying anymore for a little while. Maybe by then prices will come down a little bit, or at least I'll be able to, adjust by then. Yeah. So it just bought us some time.
And I think the reason prices rose, like those were with our American grains, like the hard red, the hard white, the grains that had typically been cheaper, they shot up in price. And I think that was mainly just a supply and demand issue because by that time people would realize flour, you can't find flour on the shelf anymore. Oh, well, we can start milling our grains. And then like everyone started ordering it and they find out that Azure Standard is typically cheaper. And I think that's why prices rose is just the supply was really hit. Look at Ellen Grains are great. We call the eggs, milk, bread a French toast emergency. Yes.
Yes. No French toast emergency.
No French toast. So have your chickens.
Yep.
And if you can,
maybe a dairy goat.
Have a dairy goat or a dairy cow. All right, Nate, our 8 backyard chickens here in Kentucky produce 3 dozen eggs a week. Not bad at all, especially if they're doing that in the winter.
Self-sufficiency rules.
Yes. Yeah. And someone else said, I think it was Jim, great time to start a garden. Absolutely. So let this be just, again, a good reminder of how can you be more self-sufficient in what way. And it doesn't matter where you live, whether it's on the country, in an apartment in the city, there's always something that you can do, even if it's also brushing up on your skills, learn how to sharpen knives, cook from scratch, roasting a chicken, like a whole chicken and what to do with that. There are just so many things that you can do.
Mary's birthday was Tuesday. That's why she wasn't on the Grainy Bunch.
Mary, a Grainy, happy birthday. I didn't know it was your birthday. Heading towards Revelation 6:6, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages. Oh, yeah. Another reason to stock up on grains. We know at some point things are going to get bad. And yeah, definitely. So happy birthday, Mary. Happy belated birthday. Okay, let me see anything. Eggs were $10 a dozen. Holy moly. $10 a dozen. Get some chickens, y'all. You don't need a rooster to have eggs if you're concerned about the noise roosters make. The chickens will lay eggs even without a rooster. Okay, so I'm just checking on.
But it's also something to think about, that choosing this route of going with grains.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's hard red going for right now for, I don't know, 25 pounds? What's that usually?
Oh, I think that's usually about like $30-40 right now.
Yeah, so let's say that goes from like $35 up to $45. That's not going to kill you. It's not going to break the bank.
Yeah.
Let's say worst case scenario, the tariffs hit. Everyone's freaking out and you've got to pay $10 more a month for your grains. It's amazing how cost efficient grains inherently are already. Yeah. That when a tough patch hits, you're still getting so much nutrition and so much good, healthy calories for your buck.
Yeah.
So this is just another example of why this is such a good route to choose, to go with God's plan of feeding ourselves with grains. Grains are a very cost-efficient option.
Yeah, grains, beans. So not only are they
even when they're
foods,
expensive.
Yeah, because you're buying in bulk, so you might have a slight heart attack. Like, that's a lot of money. But think of how long that bucket of wheat is going to last you. I mean, when we first started, so it was just the two of us. It would take us probably a good 6 months to go through 1 5-pound bucket of wheat. Now that's about every month.
5 gallon?
5 gallon bucket.
5 gallon bucket.
5 gallon. So that's about 42 pounds of wheat. We pretty much go through that in a month now.
But we're not hungry.
But we're not hungry. We're definitely not hungry.
We're not hungry.
But it's great knowing that, say tariffs hit Mexico and Canada, and now produce in and of itself has really skyrocketed in price. And while we really like those fresh fruits and veggies, we do have an advantage living in Florida where we have a better growing season.
Okay, so Kimberly brings up a good point that I don't think we've really hit specifically. Yeah. I mean, it kind of came up, but she says, of course I worry about cost, but I worry more about finding the product.
Yeah.
In my opinion, from a tariff point of view, if tariffs hit, it's not going to be so much about shortages. It's going to be more about the price hike.
Yeah.
So think about it. The same amount of grains are still going to be out there. The demand for grains will not have gone up. It's just that the government has passed a big fat tax. So the price is just going to go up. So the shortages, I don't think, are as much of an issue right now if this were to go through like they were several years ago. After the COVID fiasco, that was a whole different thing. Yeah. Shortages were a big problem back then, and price hikes. But no, I don't think shortages are going to be a big problem personally.
Yeah, just like I said, as far as if you love your ancient grains, einkorn, kamut, korzon, first of all, those can like that go out of stock. It'd be difficult to find. So if you love those, I do recommend just always keep those in stock anyway, because I know I've gone in wanting to order more and I just can't find it. Like there just not many people grow it.
What about rice?
Okay. Yeah, that's another one. I am refreshing my memory by video of rice.
Yeah.
We actually do have a lot of domestic rice.
Yeah, I know Louisiana grows a lot.
Yeah.
But don't we get a lot of our rice from Asia? China?
We do get rice from China. India is actually the #1 exporter of rice. And that's especially your jasmine, your basmati rice. That's like Thailand, India, those type of things. But if you're just looking for your typical white rice, your brown rice, we actually produce a lot here in the United States. So rice, I am unsure how affected that particular grain will be. I think he's going to look it up right now. But I do remember that India was one of the top exporters, not China, because we're also looking at those. I know Trump has talked. I think he did implement the 10% tariffs on China.
I think he paused all
those
three.
Two?
Yeah.
I thought I saw that they were still. Okay, here we go. Oh, Japan.
Yeah, it does not look like China is that big a source.
Oh, Canada is a big source. And Mexico.
Canada is, though, yes. In fact, it looks like Canada is the second largest source of rice for the United States.
Okay. Yeah.
That's not cool.
I did not realize that. Yeah, Canada is actually a huge, we get a lot of rice from Canada. So yeah, that would be another grain. Now, a note on storing grains, and I do get into this in my master prepping with grains course. Brown rice, corn, and oat groats store a little differently than wheat berries. Wheat berries just dump good container.
So no, I read that wrong.
Oh, you read it wrong.
We export rice to Canada in large amounts. We actually only import about $27 million worth.
Oh yeah, import.
Yeah.
Okay, importing mainly from Thailand is actually our largest.
Yeah. Okay. So
importer.
no, we don't. No, Canada. Yeah, Canada is by far a net importer of rice, not exporter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it looks
we
like
sell more than we sell far more rice to Canada than we import.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if that might hit our rice growers, if Canada hits us with tariffs, that'll affect our rice growers. But
we do import some from China, but not nearly as much as India. Not even close.
Okay. So yeah, rice is one of those. Again, I would right now, if you love a particular grain, look at where you typically buy it from. Again, I know that Azure and Pleasant Hill Grain, they state where they source that particular grain from. You may have to kind of search for it. But yeah, just check it out. And if it looks like it's coming from Canada and Mexico, then maybe that's something that I would recommend, stocking up a bit more on that grain just in case. Okay, do we have any? Oh, Becky says, I'm putting in another raised bed in my backyard. Good job. All right, Ellen, I live near Janie's Mill. Janie's Mill, that's, reminds me, Ellen, where
Missouri?
that is again. I want to say Missouri.
I think so.
Is that Missouri? For those who may be local. Okay, and then Jay Masher says, Farmer's Storehouse sources
Illinois.
in U.S. and has oats. Oh, okay. Janie's Mill is Illinois. So anyone who's in Illinois, that's a local mill that you can go to.
Yeah, and Jay Mastro, again, Farmer's Storehouse may source their oats in the U.S., but that's not necessarily going to affect the overall price where things land. In other words, if these tariffs go through, then maybe for the first week or two, they may not catch on to the price hikes, but eventually everyone is going to raise prices. Everyone. Yeah. It's just supply and demand. If our neighbors are selling it for, like I said, $2 a pound, people in the United States are not going to sell it for $1 a pound. They're going to sell it for $1.90 a pound.
Yeah, try to get close.
That's just how the market works. But it's always good to know where local sources are, especially during the case of shortages. But I don't really believe we're going to see a lot of shortages if these were to go through.
Yeah, it'll be the price.
I mean, maybe for a few weeks while people are sorting things out. But yeah, it's just going to be, prices are going to go up. And I think they're going to go up more long-term, to be honest. Yeah. Not just for a few weeks, but more like years, possibly.
Yeah, this may be another start for grains.
We have precedent
going back up in pricing.
With other tariffs and other things that have happened in the past where the prices go up and they stay up. Tariffs are extremely hard to get rid of. Usually once a tariff goes into place, it stays in place for a while. So that's my 2 cents on that.
No, thanks. Okay. Deborah says, where does Pleasant Hill Grain source from? Yeah. Not sure if you were here. I know their Corazon, they do state it is from the US and Canada, but if you want to know, Azure's like the easiest one to find of where they source their grain. If you click on their grain and then just go down a little bit, it says country of origin or origins, and tells you where it is. Pleasant Hill Grain, click on the grain that you want to check. And then if you go to specs, and they'll have like diameter, height, weight, but they also have country of manufacture. So I'm looking at one right now, their Corazon, and it says US, the United States and Canada. And I would say anything coming from Canada, Mexico, something to possibly stock up on. And like my husband said, we still may see an increase in pricing, even with our domestic grains. I mean, if these go through, which I'm hoping that they don't, it's going to disrupt the economy for a bit, for at least a little bit, maybe even long term. That's just how it is. Look back on history. It's just basic economic facts. Okay, let me see here. Thinking, any other questions I missed? Herb Rubio. Anything
Oh, we
else?
have a neighbor in Chiefland.
Oh, Chiefland. Hey. Yeah, you are a neighbor.
Yeah. Like 40
so,
minutes from here.
Yeah, not that far at all. All right, y'all. Anything else we want to add that you think? I think we got it covered.
I don't know. I don't think so. If anyone has any last minute questions, shoot them in.
Yep. And again, if you want to know where to be buying certain grains, that's on my website, grainsandgrit.com/buy grains. And then also, if you're really wanting to learn all about prepping with grains, why you should be prepping with grains, I have a course for y'all that's also there, grainsandgrit.com/prep with grains.
Yeah, because we've been preppers for a while.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of started out as more backpack preppers before the kids came, but we quickly shifted into an angle that no one else was doing, at least not that we heard, and that was making grains the
base,
the cornerstone.
Yeah.
I remember we joined a prepper group years ago, and part of the cost of membership was you had to donate a 50-pound bag of white rice. And these people were going to literally put it into the walls of the common shed. Like there was this bug out location where we shared a big shed, and they're putting all of this white rice. And I remember we were talking about this as we were kind of learning about grains and everything. We were thinking, that's just white rice. There's no nutrition. What if it's a grid down scenario for weeks or months? We're gonna start having malnutrition and there's nothing good in white rice. What is up with these people? So anyway,
it does store for a long time.
We quickly dug in. I remember you actually prepared a whole presentation you never got to give, but you wanted to give a talk on this subject, on what kind of nutrition grains actually can provide in a grid down scenario, a prepper type scenario, when you need energy, when you need your vitamins. And you quickly developed just on the fly and entirely out of necessity, prepping for our own plans, how to make grains a central factor in our prepping. And we found out it was so much cheaper than buying all these MREs and canned foods. And
the canned foods can go bad, or they can break.
So you get so much more nutrition for so much less money, as long as you understand how to rotate out, how to plan your different grains. A lot of people don't realize beans are grains. You don't just buy wheat. You have beans and all kinds of other grains. And you can eat like kings when the world ends.
And that's the thing is,
if you know what you're doing.
And one thing I've really learned is, I know that people, like a lot of prepper groups I've seen, they're like, oh, we need white rice. Yes, it is a carbohydrate, but oh my word, you're going to have very little nutritional value. And while, your bellies might be full for a time, it's not the smartest grain to store. I know it practically stores for a long time, but I much rather stock up on wheat berries. Go the way Joseph did.
Well, if you
in the
remember,
Bible.
when we were joining this prepper group, there was a monetary cost, and then there was a 50-pound bag of white rice. And I remember looking at all that they wanted from us, and I remember thinking, man, we can't afford this necessarily. This is going to be a real pinch for us, because we didn't have much at the time. We were living in a camper trailer.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, we do have things of value, though. Like, we could bring actual grains. We could bring real things to this group that are worth more than just, $100 or $200
like a
or whatever.
Grain mill.
Yeah, like we had grain mills and all this stuff.
The knowledge to bake bread.
The knowledge to churn out grains-based meals that were delicious, that filled you up when you're out working hard. But it just looking back, that really was a change in or a shift in our mentality. Yeah. That if you're going to prep, do it right. If you're going to prep, don't buy all the expensive, meals in a can or meals in a bag or whatever.
You can, but there's a better way to do it.
Make grains the central focus of your prepper strategy.
Yeah, because it's so much cheaper, but it is
and tastier and healthier.
It's amazing. Like, it's one of the cheaper foods. Yeah. But wow, does it pack a punch as far as nutrition goes? For heaven's sakes, you're going to have that fiber, which you need. No one seems to consider fiber. Like, okay, grid down situation, let's all be constipated. Right. Like, that's not something you want to deal with. But yeah, again, let's just, regardless of what happens, one thing I just want to leave y'all with, regardless of what happens, whether these tariffs happen, there's so many things on the table that that can happen. The next 4 years, I think, are going to be disrupting in some ways. In some ways, I'm excited about to see the disruption. Like if the Department of Education is demolished, that would be wonderful. And frankly, if the IRS goes away, that I think we can all agree that would be wonderful. But so some disruption is good. Other disruption makes me a little bit more nervous and cautious. So let us just all take this time to, first of all, not fear. God has us in control. Nothing is surprising him in the slightest. And then use this time to start really thinking, okay, if this happened, if I could no longer, if Canada and Mexico were basically cut off, what are things that I would like to have on hand? What are things that, maybe I should start growing myself? Do I have enough grains to get me through 6 months or a year, for you and your family? Start really thinking these things through. And, at the very least, you've got grains for whenever a snowstorm hits or a hurricane, or maybe you lose your job. You don't need to have these big disasters. Little disasters can happen as well. That can be a disruption. And so it's kind of good reminder and good practice in a way to really know what you need and to go ahead and stock up on it, because prices could rise. I mean, who knows? So
prices are going to rise.
Prices are going to rise.
It's a matter of when and why.
Yeah. The reasons could vary, but we've seen that. I mean, I remember I used to get a 50-pound bag of organic hard red wheat from Azure Standard for like $25.
Yeah.
That was not like that long ago.
2019.
Before COVID hit, I was able to get from Azure. Yeah, it was about $35 for the organic hard red wheat. Now they're around like $45, $50. So not a massive increase, but like at the time I thought, holy moly. And I remember actually COVID hit and they pretty much doubled. I remember I was then paying around $60, $65 from Azure, those same grains. Like I remember telling you about it, like,
That's what I was talking about. That's when I went in and looked at our stockpile and thought, I am so glad that I had these. Yeah. That I bought these before the spike.
I know. Like that was, and that happened. There was a reason for it, but now I think they did come down a little bit in pricing, but at the time they jumped and it was a shock to me. Okay, let me see here.
I suppose I look at grains like a commodity. I mean, it's like gold or silver.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only going to go up. So I just like the idea of buying as much as early as I can.
People got to eat.
But Rosa asked, how do you store berries? She's asking Nate, how do you store berries? Because he pointed out berries, grains can store practically forever if you do it right. And that's one of the things you get into in your training course on prepping with grains, because it's so simple if you just understand the technique. And it really doesn't require a lot of input up front. It's not like you got to buy all of this stuff necessarily. No. You just got to have a few basic cheap things, really.
Yep.
And a system. But
Nate, I store my berries in 5-gallon buckets with those cool lids that spin off.
Yes, the gamma lids. Those are awesome.
Love the gamma lids. Yeah. Note about the gamma lids. So learn from me. If you ever, first of all, they don't come off the bucket. So when it's on that bucket,
the rim. So once you install them on a bucket, they're intended to stay on that bucket.
Yeah, keep that bucket. Make sure you're installing it on a bucket that you want to keep for forever. And then also be careful if you ever move those buckets, because now this was an actual moving from house to house, and we had people moving our stuff, and unbeknownst to me, they cracked the rim of a gamma lid, and that allowed moisture and stuff to get into my grains. I go and open it up, and let's just say that became chicken feed. It was not pretty. So that's one thing about and that can happen with any lid, but definitely if you're moving your grains, watch those. But gamma lids, many people sell those. Azure sells them. So you can throw them in on your Azure order. Pleasant Hill Grain, Amazon. Love those gamma lids. Yeah, my chickens loved me. Yeah, they got a lot. That was, broke my heart because that bucket was about 3/4 full. But it had gotten moldy because moisture got in. So that's the biggest thing with wheat berries. Super easy. You need to container with a good lid to keep up bugs and moisture. Boom. Like that's it. All right. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. It's been, 15 minutes. So thank y'all so much, everyone who joined us this evening, took time out of your evening to chat with us. And again, hopefully let's all just think about the best ways to prepare and to not panic or anything like that. But I hope that this was helpful for y'all, gave y'all some information that maybe you hadn't thought about or didn't know about. And I think we're going to go ahead and sign off, y'all. Thank y'all so very much for being here. And new podcast coming out on Tuesday. For those who didn't know, I've started a podcast. So you can check those out on the podcast playlist. But new episode is dropping on Tuesday. And I'm excited about it. I'm really loving it. But otherwise, y'all have a good evening, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.